Hi, this is Naomi with Sword and Steel, and today we're going to be going through every color in the complete line of the Vallejo Premium Airbrush Color. So the first 20 paints in the line are the Opaques, and these guys were all primed with Vallejo's Airbrush Ivory Primer. These are just brilliant, smooth paints that you could certainly use in an airbrush or just painting on. They're bright colors, you've got a bunch of varieties, and they are really nice quality paints. Here you're seeing 2 layers of the paint airbrushed on. And yeah, I very much enjoy these. So smooth. I used a 0.5 nozzle and they went through easy peasy. Lovely. The next subcategory are the fluorescents, and these are some lovely things. They're quite transparent. As you can see, with one layer they don't really look much like fluorescence. You really need a second layer for them to have their bright, beautiful colors. I even think that the 2 yellows might need a 3rd layer, but they're transparent paints so you can even brighten up other paints with them. And of course you will need to put something light underneath them for them to come through, because they're transparent. If you put something dark underneath them, you're not going to be able to see them mostly at all. The next subline is these metallics. Now these would be colored metallics. Vallejo also has a metal color metallics, and they are super reflective, absolutely gorgeous. Mostly in silvers, where these ones are not the same, definitely not the same, but they are still gorgeous regardless, I've got to say. As you can see, you certainly could use only 1 layer, and some of them look really nice with just 1 layer, but for the colors, the metals really start looking pretty vibrant when you add a 2nd layer. But you could do either, and that option is something that you should consider. These are really nice looking metallics. And the metal medium I used as a silver in this case. I'm going to keep playing with it to see how it can create its own metals. I will have to get back to you on that one. Now the last subcategory of colors we have are the candies. How you're supposed to use the candies is a little bit of a mystery to me still. They're very transparent. I really like how that brown one looks though. It looks like a wood, like a lacquered wood. They have a slight gloss to them that the other ones don't necessarily have, you know, besides the metallics. But these are still a mystery to me. I think they would work great as a glaze. I am still experimenting with these candies. Alright, now let's look at each paint individually. As a reminder, this fellow here is what they all looked like after I primed them with Vallejo Ivory Primer, other than the little gloss black guys down there. And the very first paint we're going to look at is white. As you can see, he is now white. So this is 2 coats, and 2 coats is probably all that you need. You could keep going, of course. It's smooth enough that you could put layer upon layer, I think, without affecting the details much on each layer. Now this is for airbrushing, and these opaques are very great for airbrushing. When it comes to applying them with a brush, you're going to need more coats. This, for example, my thumbnail here is 4 coats of that white. 2 coats on the airbrush, but 4 coats is what I was satisfied with to get a single white color onto a flat, untextured surface. So that's actually pretty good for a white. It's not going to be perfect. Whites are pretty hard to do, but that's actually pretty good. And this one is flesh tone. So this one is, again, 2 coats of flesh tone over ivory, and I think this would look great with a bit of a wash over it. Any of the brown washes would work really nicely to make this fleshy. Again, you can brush it on. This was 4 coats as well. Now, as I said, the opaques are really nice through the airbrush. With a paintbrush, they're also really nice, but you're going to need more coats. The darker the color you go, the less coats you're going to need. This orange here, premium orange, 2 layers with the airbrush, but you're probably going to need 3 layers with a brush. Still, it comes out really nicely. Now this one is bright red. This would make some really nice armor. It doesn't need, you could go with 1 coat with the airbrush if you wanted to. It covers really well, and it also covers really well by brush. This is 1 coat, 1 single coat of that bright red, and that's what the other ones are like as well. As you get into the darker opaques, you need less. So this lovely pink, covers very well. I don't know, demons, nails, flowers. It would probably work as a great mix for making purples, highlights for purples, since purples go towards pink when they get brighter. This is violet. Very easy to use paint. This one is cobalt blue. It is a super nice blue, isn't it? Look how vibrant that is. For canvas paintings, I would probably choose this to work for some multiple skies. Some pretty blue marines. This would be really easy to use, and you wouldn't need to use much of it because it covers so well. Again, the lighter you go, the less the paint is going to cover, both for airbrush and for brush on, but all of these are great for just brushing on your miniature. This one's going to need about 2 coats to brush on properly. You want to get, so the first layer is going to be applying the paint, getting the color down, and the second layer, when you're brushing it on, that layer is for evening out the coat. And then the third layer is if it's for one of these lighter colors, perhaps that one as well, one of these lighter colors that just need a little bit extra. I really like this color. I actually liked it a lot when it only had 1 layer on it, because there is a lot of blue hidden inside this miniature. So I really think that you could spray paint this black, because it's opaque. It'll cover black just fine. You could certainly spray paint this black and then highlight that black with blue, or with white, with the regular white, and then spray a single layer of this dark blue. This one has a wealth of color inside it hiding, so I definitely have to play with this a bit more to see how vibrant a blue it can be. I imagine this one is actually really great for mixes. If you want to take a white and mix a blue with it, a nice deep blue, this would be the one, because it's full of hidden color. This one is called Blue Green. As all of the other opaques, it has great coverage. It's one that you'll want 2 or 3 coats on. Again, the lighter ones versus the darker ones need a bit more color, but it's really great. It's super smooth. It's really pretty. This one would be a nice ocean color, or a touch of this mixed with one of your darker blues, and it would make a great highlight blue. This one is called Basic Green, and it is super nice. Same as before. I think if you it has a wealth of color hiding in this single color. I think if you primed it with black and then applied a white for highlights and then sprayed on or brushed on this green, it's just transparent enough, but just bright enough that you get a 2-color toned necron or whatever you happen to be painting. It's a really, really nice color. This one is called dark green. Same as the dark blue. This one is hiding its color, so you can really make an easy shaded and highlighted and shadowed effect just by what you put underneath it. So I've got to try these out more. The darks, the ones that are called dark, seem to have a lot of color hidden within them that are waiting to be played with. It would be great for mixing as well, mixing colors together, because it's so vibrant. It's hidden, the vibrancy is hidden, but once you mix it together to try and create your own mix, it shouldn't dull down very much, which is what you would really like for a paint. Paint that doesn't dull down when you mix it is very nice. This one is called Yellow Ochre. And much like the other light colors, you're going to need to apply multiple layers if you're brushing this on. But as you can see, 2 layers with the airbrush has worked just fine. Don't mind any bits at the bottom, that's just my poor painting handle that I was using to paint these guys has gotten filled with paint, of course, since I painted all of these guys with the one handle. Painting handles are really handy when you're airbrushing. Here we are. This is the painting handle that is now covered in, how many paints we got? Like 53 different paints. This is actually covered. It just happens to be black again because black was the last color that I used on it. So when you're airbrushing, it's just really nice to have the model a little bit distant from your hand so that you can control. I just find it easier to control and your hand isn't getting in the way of spraying it on properly. And of course you'd like to use it when you're brushing on as well, for the same reason. Keep your hands out of the way. This is actually the, what is it? Phosphorescent. This guy is the ivory primer covered with phosphorescent paint. That one might need a bit of work. I think the phosphorescent paint, you may just need to brush it on. It wasn't bright enough. Alright, that was the ochre. This one is the dark ochre. Make some nice trees or sand, or mixing in a reddish toned, some color that you need a little bit of, just a hint of brownish red. Smooth on. You don't need a lot of layers for when you're using it with brushing it on. This one is called Raw Sienna, and it's lovely. Another tree color. I would say that the dark ochre dry brush over this raw sienna would look great. And for skin, so if you painted this on someone's skin and then did a reddish brown wash, some wash that has more red than this one, but it was a wash just the same, and then you started applying your highlights and skin tones, I think you would come out with a fairly realistic skin color. I've got to say, because remember, the shadows of your skin should reflect the fact that there's blood inside them, so they should be very red, as you can see on my hand. See how pink that is in the darkness. That is if your skin is my color, anyway. Now, this one is called Sepia, simply Sepia. I can tell that it also has a wealth of color hidden within it, so it should be great for mixing and for, and also probably for turning into a wash as well. if you grab some airbrush thinner, you could probably turn this into a wash. Mildly so. These airbrush paints are quite thin already. You don't need to water them down to use them. I would suggest you not water them down to use them because they're already the perfect consistency for painting on miniatures. And I also don't suggest you put them on a wet palette. These are probably best on a dry palette because the wet palette will naturally thin them down, and you do not want these guys thinned down. They're already the perfect consistency for painting. I cannot express that enough. These guys are the perfect consistency for painting on your miniature already. This guy is gray, simple gray. It's a great stone gray. I would use it as a medium color for a stone gray, or a shadow for a white, though generally I do like to add a little bit of blue to my shadows for white. So I probably use this guy and a touch of that dark blue, just a touch, to make a shadow for white. Never want to, whites look great when they've got dark shadows. Don't be afraid to make your shadows for white dark. The last one of the opaques. So this is the black, the opaque black. Now, this, as you can see, is actually fairly matte. So if you're looking for a matte black that goes on quite smoothly, then this might be your guy. Very close in matteness to Chaos Black spray. If you've ever used it, it is a fantastic spray, but that's another video. But this is a really nice black, and if I'm looking for a matte black, particularly for airbrush, I would go ahead with and use this, the Fluorescence. Okay, so this is fluorescent yellow. I do think it needs another coat. Basically the fluorescence you probably want to just keep adding until you get it to the point that you want, noting that the point that it will stop becoming any better is when it actually hits this color. So as you can see, it's got a little bit of a ways to go to actually hit to that color. So these guys I would really like to use for mixing. Yes, they would make fantastic glowing effects because they are quite vibrant. This one definitely needs more layers, I think, but the majority of them are quite vibrant colors. I would agree that they are fluorescent. Maybe not these two yet. This one definitely needs more colors. 2 coats was not enough. I should keep going with it. The orange, this scarlet red so this one is the fluorescent orange. I did find, interestingly enough, that the model color in Vallejo's model color line, they have a fluorescent orange, and though it is exactly the same color, this one, when you're painting it on by brush, this one requires less coats. However, these guys, when you're brushing them on, are going to require multiple coats, and you absolutely want something bright underneath them. I already said it, but you're going to want something bright underneath them. You could even put a yellow underneath to brighten up that orange. Something like that. Like a green underneath the orange, not gonna work, but something that orange, so orange goes to yellow naturally with light. So you could put a bright yellow, like this one, the opaque yellow. You could put this underneath your orange to even brighten it up some more. But and the red, you could put a bright orange underneath, and the pink you would probably want to put a bright white underneath. Both pinks would want a bright white underneath, unless you're trying to get a red effect, because the pinks will absolutely go red if you put orange underneath. The purple, yeah, all of these guys you really want a white underneath, unless you want to turn that blue into a green, and you put one of these yellows underneath. And this green could probably work well with this yellow underneath. There's a lot of things that you could do it to make slightly altered effects. I've got to show you off show off this scarlet. It is so bright. I hope you can see it properly. It is super bright. What would I use it for? Probably, it might be too bright for fire, but some sort of glow effect, I would imagine. So much you could do. This one is rose fluorescent, and not as bright as the magenta fluorescent. This makes some pretty flowers. And it'll also make a really nice mix, I think. If you want to mix colors, fluorescence would be a really nice way to go. Though if you're mixing with an opaque, remember that the opaque color is going to take over the fluorescent because it's so transparent. So you want just a touch of the opaque and a lot of the transparent fluorescent. This one is called magenta. Magenta fluorescent. Could use another coat, I think. Now, this is gorgeous. This is such a pretty color purple. So pretty. I love it. I want to see what white shows up. So this again is ivory. If white can get this to be much brighter, so since it's transparent, you could also make really neat watercolor effects, I imagine, as well. With any of these transparent paints, you can make really nice watercolor effects. Again, though, these are going to require multiple layers, maybe 4 layers, minimum probably 4 layers, using a brush to get these to this point. This was 2 layers here. These guys probably need some more, but you're going to need at least 4 layers. Maybe not for these two. These went bright really quickly, but imagine that you're going to have to take some time and build up to it, which is not actually a bad thing. It'll give you a lot of control, forced control, over the color of your minis. This is such a nice blue, isn't it? Look at that blue. So this blue would work great, which is slightly different. Here is the basic blue versus the fluorescent blue. You can see that they're very similar in color, but the fluorescent blue actually has more shadowing to it than this one. This is a more basic opaque color, while this one already has more shadows, interestingly enough, I find. So they're quite similar. This one, I would totally use it for, like, if I did painting and it wasn't quite bright enough, I would absolutely use that color of the sky or the ocean to brighten it up. Since it's transparent, it'd be easy to put layer upon layer until I got the effect that I wanted. And this one is green fluorescent. So these guys, like the green, the orange, the red, these would be great over white if you want to use it for glowing effects, simple glowing effects. As for these metals, as I mentioned, our lower ones are 2 layers of metal over gloss black, and our top ones are 2 layers of metal over ivory. This is the metal medium, but I think it works just fine as a very light silver metal as well. Now, here on my finger, I created using the candy blue and the metal medium my own metal. It's a slightly duller metal than, for example, this metal blue, but this one's only 1 layer, and with a couple layers, you could certainly make your own metal, I think, using the metal medium. Here I actually used the magenta fluorescent with the metal medium. Again, it was only 1 layer, and you get a mildly metal appearance. This is what the metal medium by itself looks like over gloss black. As you can see, just with the metal medium, you can certainly make a nice silver. Figure that turned out pretty good. Again, the metal colors by Vallejo definitely seem to be superior to these guys in their reflectivity, but the metal line doesn't have all of these beautiful colors, all these lovely colors, and they also don't have these bright, this bright gold as well. It's a really nice gold. I'm going to get to that one. First, I have to show you this metallic yellow. So, I guess where you'd use these guys are very quick gem effects. Or this could be mixed together with something to create a golden gold. This one is over ivory versus this one, which is over gloss black. There's a much notable difference when you only have one layer, but there is still a notable difference in their appearance when you have two layers of the metallic over it. So the metallics are going to be different depending on what you put underneath them. We've got our ivory and we've got our gloss black. I think white underneath would be best for little gem effects though, because it brings out the color a bit more. This is perhaps more metallic for, perhaps more realistic metallic for if you're doing it on armor or whichever, but this brings out the color more, so that I think would be nicer for ornamental pieces, whatever you're going for. Metallic red over ivory and over gloss black. Really pretty, bright color. This one seems more sinister, the black underneath. Let me know what you think of these colors in the comments below, absolutely. And if you had any questions about them. Oh, and the metallics I haven't said yet, but the metallics are mostly opaque and they easily are brushed on, easily. Yeah, they're very straightforward to use. Airbrushing, they're very straightforward. And they go through the airbrush really smoothly, but they're also really easy to use with a brush too. These two metallics, it's nearly impossible to tell the difference, I think, between which one is ivory and which one is gloss black. Super nice, you know, quick lens effect. You need a lens on binoculars or eyeballs or anything like that. Easy peasy. Done. Or gemstones again. Such a pretty color. It'd probably make a really nice glowing effect as well for power weapons. For example, this green I use on the power weapons for my AdMech, and well, actually it's over silver metal, but if I wanted to have an even more glowy effect, I'd do it over a paler color. These are really nice. Make some really nice armor plating too, particularly over the gloss black. Looks like it would make some really nice armor painting. This is silver, and the gloss black seems to shine here, literally. The silver seems to be more accurate on this one because of the shadows the gloss black created. This is a much softer looking silver. And quite nice. the silver would be good to put underneath any of the transparent colors as well to make your own metal, I think. Oh yes, and these guys. So this is supposed to be gold, and it's actually really close, particularly surprisingly the one with the ivory underneath. This really looks like aged gold to me. This one is a little bit too yellow, I think, though I think it would make a really nice highlight for a lot of things. So I'd probably use it as a highlight. This one by itself, though, looks like some aged gold, where the cracks show a bit more like a dusty look because of the ivory that wasn't as covered up as in other places. So here is an actual golden necklace, and it's pretty close in hue. This doesn't have a dark shadow like this has, which is why I think this one is actually closer. Although this seems to have a slight more touch of copper to it than this color, only very, very slightly. This is also super close. The copper is also super close. I'm contemplating that just the combination of these two might make a really realistic gold. Particularly the base here looks nearly exactly the same shade as my necklace. I can't tell if you can see it in the video, but I'm thinking perhaps with this as the bottom, which is gloss black copper, and then maybe this as a buffed dry brushing over top would give you this appearance, but it's super close. So I've got to remember that to check out these two coppers. As you can see, this one is the saturation of the copper color is more bright and the ivory, but this still makes a really nice copper effect. And it is super shiny too, nice and reflective. There is a copper in their metal colors, but I've got to say this is quite nice. I like it. I think I might like it better. Both of them, it's a really nice copper. I use it all over the place. Now here is steel. I do think unless you're looking at stainless steel, I do think the black underneath seems to be more accurate. Black under silver just works for making shadows without any effort. Nevertheless, this would work as a nice darker bottom to making your own metal with one of the transparent colors. And I also noted that because the candies, which we're going to get to, are glossy, they would be a great candidate for putting over a metal, because anything that is glossy would work better for the most part than anything that is more matte when you're looking to look for a nice little realistic metal effect. So that's something to think about. Yeah, but like for an Iron Man or Steel Man in this case, I think the black underneath works better. But for mixing metals, this works pretty nice, and of course for highlighting. So this is gunmetal. There's actually not that much difference between the two of them. Kind of looks like more of an aged gunmetal, and yes, you can kind of see the darkness in this one, but it's actually quite similar. And so the gunmetal doesn't seem to really care what's underneath it. It's going to show off what it wants. And it's not as reflective, but it's gunmetal, so I think it's working out really nicely. And lastly, our metallic black. So looks much different from than a gloss black. This one is just a metallic black and it looks nice. Kind of seems like semi-matte metal. It's very smooth though. I think it would look really nice on as a tank because it goes on so smooth. It's actually very similar to their flat black, but you can tell a difference in the reflectivity, yes. And yeah, once you put 2 coats on it, you can't really tell what's underneath it. Alright, now let's move on to the mysterious candies. So on each of the back of these paints, it tells you that it's a water-based acrylic polyurethane color of extreme strength and resistance to impacts and fuel escapes. Apply with an airbrush or brush for all surfaces. Can be diluted with premium reducer if you need it thinner for a smaller nozzle. So this one is candy yellow. I really think they're more like a glaze than an actual paint. They're super transparent. Though this, as you remember, if you remember, the white is what I put on here, and I just played around with this with a couple layers of the candy racing blue. I didn't try to make it a simple layer. I tried to make a weird watery effect, and that's kind of what it comes out to be. And then this is just a couple straight layers of the black candy. As you can see, they're quite glossy, but they're super transparent. I'm not entirely certain what I would be using them for. I think they've got a lot of potential. And this one is candy dark yellow. You'd need multiple layers to actually for them to show up, but it means that you can either have a subtle effect or a more pronounced effect. I think the oranges actually work really nicely for, the orange and the brown work really nicely. I'm just going to scoop the brown in here first. That really looks like, if you're going to paint up a pretend cabinet, I would go for this. This looks great. Alright, and these guys, look how pretty they are. This would probably make a really nice, actually any of the green or the blue would look really nice combined in water effects. Vallejo has a water effects, and if you wanted to tint it different colors, these would probably work really well with it. Maybe a bit of brown if you want to age the water into kind of swamp water. Man, they're pretty though. And this one for sea green, definitely nice. These guys have so much potential. I just have to figure out how best to use them. I'm going to be playing with these a lot. And lastly, before I clip up this video, I had a couple questions from the patrons about these paints, and I thought I'd answer them here as well. So the first question is, as the premium line has a different base formula, a hybrid acrylic polyurethane resin, do you feel they behave differently, or does that influence how fast they dry? And as I told him, I don't actually feel much difference at all from any other high quality paint. I haven't noticed a faster drying time nor a different feel while I'm using them with a brush. Now they are great. They are high quality paints. Perhaps it's their makeup that makes them so nice. Through the airbrush, they are super smooth. But for using it with a paintbrush, they really do feel the same as a nice high quality paint. On a palette, you'd be hard pressed to pick them out from any of their non-premium counterparts, though I have definitely found that the premium doesn't necessarily require as many layers than the same colors in their model range, so there must be some sort of difference there. Even though the color is completely the same, the premium line doesn't seem to need as many layers, so that is interesting there. And some of the paints are just fine, as you saw, with just one coat. but again, you use them and you clean them out of your brushes, particularly the same way you would clean out any other acrylic paint. And I also wanted to clarify again that I used a 0.5 nozzle. If you get into the smaller nozzles, you'll probably need to thin them down. On their backs, they suggest being thinned down with the premium reducer, which is part of the line. I had no problem cleaning out the paint, and I had no problem using the paint through the nozzle. They were perfect. The next question is, how quickly do the paints separate in the bottle? Seems I'm always having to give the Vallejo paints I have extra shaking to get it to mix all right, and they separate as soon as you look at them. Are these ones better in that regard? Thanks for your hard work. So the thinner the paint, the faster a paint is going to separate. And all of these are airbrush paints, so they've been thinned down to go through an airbrush properly. But this isn't a bizarre thing. That's just the nature of paint. However, these guys are really easy to remix. Just make certain that you're remixing it right before you use it, and you're going to have a perfect paint every time thus far. They have not been hard to remix. I do have a mixing bowl in every one of them, but I don't need to use my electronic mixer for these. My own little arms are good enough to do the job. The last question I had, is this paint good value? I haven't tried it before and I'm looking for recommendations. And I would say, now that I've used every single one of them, I would say that they are pretty fantastic value for multiple reasons, actually. So they are maybe twice the price of smaller paint bottles, like the 17 ml Vallejo bottles or the 12 ml Citadel pots. Now those pots, though, bear in mind, in the most case they're thicker paint. And these airbrush paints, since the airbrushes are already the airbrush paints have already been thinned down to the perfect consistency, and when you're using the smaller paints, then you're going to have to thin them down with water or thinner. So the smaller bottles are more concentrated versions. Nevertheless, it is really nice to grab a paint without having to do anything to it, which would be these guys. And it is 60 mils versus 17 mils. So that's something to keep in mind. Would I recommend these paints? Absolutely. And the other thing to make them more valuable is that these guys don't seem to need as many layers as some of their counterparts, their smaller counterparts. Something about them is very good layering. Not all of them. The lighter the paint, the more likely you're going to need multiple layers, and it seems to be basically the same sort of thing, but they do inevitably cover, which some other paints you'll find won't necessarily be a good cover on their own. Then these ones can. I hope that answers all of your questions. Well, thank you patrons for asking them so I can make this video better. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe. If you think it will be useful to you or to someone else, please share it around. I do hope this was useful to you. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.